everybody! Welcome to the second episode or installment of Starring Biographies. And last time we ended off with Helena the Persistent, so now it's Nova's time. Nova is the second queen in this AU, and she was again made by Shyhobbyistdrawer31 on DeviantArt. Go check out his work. And yeah, hope you have a lovely day or night. Please ignore any background noise, and thanks. Like and subscribe, please. Okay, let's begin. Fascinated with the furthest reaches of space, discovering what was never seen before. Planets, stars, galaxies, and universes. Butterfly, the cosmic. Born 8:96 a.m., died 9:69 a.m. Was queen 9:18 a.m. to 9:49 a.m. Married to Hercules Firefly. Children, Celia Butterfly. Butterfly was born on the 31st day of Dwarf in the year 896. As the oldest child and heiress of Queen Helena Butterfly and King Richmond Cross. A princess of delicate features, she was born in her father's likeness. Her hair was pink and her eyes were gray, and she had pink galaxies on her cheeks. A shy, calculated, and reserved child, Nova's personality was quite contrasting to her mother's at her age, finding more interest in books than friends. The princess felt most comfortable in the Firefly libraries, occupying hours of her day reading any volume she could get her hands on. According to most servants, she was the first to arrive and the last to leave, and could go about the whole day without talking to anyone. However, towards her family, Nova displayed a certain warm and kind and caring side of her personality most other people thought to be completely non-existent. Nevertheless, Nova's loneliness and solitude wouldn't be a subject of preoccupation to Queen Helena, as it wasn't long before the princess made her first friendship, the young Cassie Firefly, daughter of Lady Andromeda, who would go on to be her best friend. In regards to how the two had met, Nova recounts in a late passage of her diary. I had already noticed her before stacking books in their respective shelves. Then one day, she sat next to me reading, and I didn't say anything. Eventually, she began sitting with me every day, and even reading the same thing. We began discussing ideas and got quite close ever since. Pity I can't say the same about her half-wit twin brother. Oh yeah, Nova also became well acquainted with Cassie's brother, Hercules, during her time in the library. The princess didn't quite see eye to eye with the young Firefly Lord, whose favorite pastime became pestering Nova and his sister with various pranks and tricks, distracting them from whatever they were reading and taking enjoyment in their annoyance, especially Princess Nova's increasing frustration and irritation at him. Then came the New Year's Eve of 899. A night was marked by the occurrence of hecatism, with the moons of Mewni. Encouraged by Cassie, Nova escaped her curfew and climbed to the castle rooftop, where, according to the late castle garrisons, she spent the remainder of the night observing the moons, stars, and planets moving in the dark. In pure awe and fascination, many believe it was there that the princess's passion for stargazing was born. In addition to having devoured all of the Firefly Library books and encyclopedias relating to the cosmos in less than 2 weeks, Nova began climbing onto the rooftops to watch the stars every night that followed. eventually coming to claim she could hear every celestial object talking to her, as if they were trying to warn her of something. Whether at the time Princess Nova could actually hear the cosmos or if it was just a child's imagination speaking louder, it may never be known. In any case, it wasn't long before such rumors made their way to her parents' ears, who, while scolding her for breaking the rules, didn't discourage her from her pastime, even offering the princess her first Atmostar by occasion of her anniversary in 900 AM. On the same day, likely encouraged by King Richmond, Queen Helena placed Nova under the personal tutelage of Lady Andromeda Firefly, alongside her best friend, Cassie, and to her dismay, Hercules too. Eager to learn everything she could from Lady Andromeda, Nova proved to be of an extraordinary intellectual capability, solving puzzles and riddles in no time, and even being able to hypothesize on par with her tutor on several theories on the space-time continuum. The princess's surprise, Hercules had equally displayed a commendable intellect and rationality that rivaled even her own, which reportedly paved the way for an intense, tireless competition for the position of top student and Andromeda's praise and attention between the two. Nova's desire for attention would only be deepened by her brother Polo's birth in 904, although it faded not long after, when the princess finally accepted she was no longer number one, but rather part of a balanced, harmonious structure, each piece being worth more than all the stars and planets in the sky combined, as the princess put it herself. In 909 AM, Andromeda's tutelage came to an end, the Lady Firefly claiming to have already taught her everything she knew. It was true. In fact, from the length of the orbit of the 3 moons of Mewni, Darlene, Diana, and Darhenia, to the type of galaxy Supina was, and even how many comets had passed by the planet so far, the princess knew it all backwards. While relieved she would no longer have to deal with Hercules every day, Nova confided in Cassie she felt insecure and afraid she wouldn't be able to evolve any further in her studies and expand her knowledge in the future. However, Cassie soon provided her with the solution when she suggested she simply went to Elfindor to proceed with her knowledge. In 910, by occasion of her 14th birthday, Nova received the magic wand, which metamorphosized into a telescope. Guests present at the event claimed that as soon as the princess touched the relic, she was engulfed in a white aura, floating in the air as her cheeks glowed and she whispered intangible sentences. When her mother asked her what happened, Nova replied, "I heard the universe talk to me, like it did as a child. It was simply congratulating me on my achievements, and I thanked it." After leaving her daughter be quickly examined by Lady Felice Cross, Queen Helena allowed the party to continue as planned. At the end of the day, the princess also received from her parents a scholarship to Elfindor, choosing to pursue the astrophysics and astronomy courses, well known for taking up about 8 years to conclude, and doctorate and master's degrees. The one condition Helena imposed was that Nova kept her informed if any more episodes took place. However, her excitement in going to Elfindor would be short-lived, as she soon found out Hercules Firefly, who had been placed in the very same class, making him Nova's classmate once again. While their rivalry persisted, this time the princess made every effort not to be swayed by her emotions, opting to fully immerse herself in her studies and devote herself to learning everything she possibly could on the cosmos, reality, and time itself. Nova was, with no doubt, a prominent and dedicated student, regularly being praised by her teachers with a knowledge level considered unrivaled by most. It was still in her first year in Elfindor that she came up with the famous theory on the origins of the universe, still widely accepted nowadays, claiming the universe and all matter itself had its origins with a great explosion for unknown origins, all at the same time being contracted into a ball by some also unknown force. A lesser known fact is that Hercules ridiculed all the names Nova suggested for the theory, leading the princess to leave it nameless and simply call it by its literal name. But physics and the cosmos weren't the only thing studied by Nova at Elfindor. As a butterfly princess, since before her, she also focused on her magical training, which usually took place after her classes ended. She had an outstanding control over her magic, and made quite a variety of useful spells, in their majority related to astronomy and the cosmos. Some of her most famous spells include the Asteroid Bombardment, Comet Tail Ribbon Lasso, and Black Hole Concentration. However, the spell she became most acknowledged by was a perfection of the already existing telescope spell, so that the wand could capture further and crisper images. To this day, the Wand of Nova is the form which caught the best and farthest perspectives, as it is also the only one with a magical lens present in its form, and the princess would make good use of this advantage, specifically to take her wand stargazing from the terrace of Elfindor as often as she could, while taking notes of what she saw. Notable occurrences include a triple lunar eclipse, a rainbow meteor shower, a twin sunset and sunrise, and finally a supernova of a distant star. It was also around this period she began gaining interest in studying the personal records of Queen Stellaria, Asteria, and Helia, adding any information she found about their cosmic studies to what she already knew on her journal. The more she was involved in her magical studies, the more often her episodes of her blacking out and having conversations with an unknown intermediary began taking place. Her classmates reporting it happened during classes, recess, or even during the night. Nevertheless, Nova eventually found a way to control her visions by way of meditating every night and using the wand to see what the voices of the cosmos wanted to tell her. These visions would range from allowing her to see the close future to getting a close look at the past, or simply being transported in real time to a random location in the universe, which gave her access to more detailed perspectives at many of the celestial objects she studied in class. Nova eventually became known amongst her classmates as the crazy one who speaks to planets. Though such nicknames didn't affect her deeply, with the princess lacking some pride in her ability. Nowadays, the origin of Nova's connection to the cosmos remains a very debated subject amongst scholars and historians. While some claim she had been cursed at birth, the most widely accepted answer is that it was simply a side effect of her mother's overflow of magic passing on to her under the form of a deep bond with every celestial object in the night. Back to her journey at Elfindor. By the third year of her course, in 913, Nova had been instructed to work in pairs for the grade assignment, but her expectations were thrown out the window when the only available option was Hercules. Although initially refusing to do so, Nova resigned to her fate, which her grade depended on, and complied to enduring the torture that would ensue. As she commented in a letter to Cassie, details of their teamwork are recounted by Princess Nova herself. Initially, Hercules made fun of me the whole time and hardly contributed anything to the project. He would rudely mock my suggestions, grotesquely joke about my theories, and even completely demolish any idea I had. It wasn't until I snapped at him and told him that either he accepted to work together with me or else we'd both fail the project and be surpassed by the rest of our classmates, which wouldn't be true for me because I still had more credits than him. That he tried to make an effort in doing something even remotely cooperative to our work. From then on, he became a completely different person, more reliable, interventive, and helpful. I have to admit, Hercules made quite the interesting suggestions and additions to our project, and even praised me on some occasions. Maybe working with him isn't so bad after all. What matters is, after finishing the project and attaining a perfect grade, Nova debated on whether insisting on keeping up such fiery rivalry with Hercules and her was even worth it at all, with the young firefly questioning the same thing. From that point on, the pair's arguments and conflicts subsided, giving place first to a tolerance of each other's presence, then to an amicable truce, and finally to a fellowship and friendship. In 915, after having a vision of a pine tree being cut in the cold forest, Nova received the news of her grandfather's pine's death. While heartbroken and grief-stricken for the death, Nova felt some comfort in being able to return to Mewni and briefly reunite with her loved ones, and even more grateful that Hercules had offered to assure her homework for her while she was gone. In 915, Nova and Hercules came up with their first hypothesis together for their joking words of Hercules, their first child, a theory of relativity which most interested the principle reflected on the relativity of time itself. Funnily enough, as recorded by Hercules in his personal records, despite their teacher's initial approval and congratulation on the discovery of such a construct, cases of students in Elfindor became apathetic and unfazed towards everything under the guise of their overall worthless, ephemeral existence began to multiply, with him and Nova being forced to deny their theory in order to restore order and normality in the university dimension. Between 916 and 918, given a lighter school schedule, Nova seized the opportunity she was given to go to other dimensions and study their solar systems and dynamics. From planets with 2 suns to worlds with little to no or gravity or different atomic densities and unique light distributions. Most of these travels were made alone, though it's worth noting that she was sometimes accompanied by Hercules. In correspondence to her parents, Nova resumed her learning experience in a shorthand, well-known sentence: "I knew that I know nothing." Then came the fateful year of 918. One night, Nova woke up from her sleep after having an unsettling vision, which later described in her journal. "I saw Mom falling into an abyss of light, and the beams were coming out of me. Afterwards, all while the voices kept whispering that time was running out and that it was too late. Determined to ease her conscience, Nova left Elfindor in the middle of the night, returned to Mewni to make sure her mother was all right. However, as soon as she arrived, she found the castle in a restless and agitated state, servants walking back and forth with a somber expression. Upon asking a maid for the reason for the turbulence, Nova was met with the shocking news that Queen Helena had been murdered the same night in her sleep. Her Majesty reported to have reacted with an unexpected emptiness, detachment, and hollowed-out response to the entire circumstance of her mother's death, opting to spend the rest of the night alone in her chambers. The scenery of Nova's returning the following day ready to assume the crown as if nothing had happened is nothing but a historical inaccuracy caused by her own well-known rationality and usual motionless and cold response to what happened around her. In reality, Nova spent the 5 following days in isolation in her room and allowing visits from no one, just strange noises being reported by those passing by. That is until the 6th night, she was informed by a knight that a young firefly requested to see her. Hoping to see Cassie, she opened the door to find the last person she'd expect, Hercules. Lord Firefly records that there was no word exchanged between the two, just Nova hugging him and sobbing quietly in his arms, while claiming she couldn't see anything. The young lad returned to Elfindor after spending the night by Nova's side, leaving the soon-to-be queen with a bewildered feeling for the first time. Just about a semester left to finish her course, Nova decided to halt her studies and fully devote herself to being Queen Butterfly. The coronation ceremony happening just about a month after Queen Helena's death. Cassie reported that, although smiling and apparently serene, Nova's eyes told a different story. Her Majesty looked impatient and uneasy, as she did whenever she had any unfinished business or pending chores. She tried to look present when in reality she was miles away. Cassie later stated in her personal records, One night after being crowned, there was a failed attempt to murder Queen Nova herself. After her room was invaded in the middle of the night by a hooded figure that managed to stab her in the navel before it was driven away by King Father Richmond and Prince Polo, who were attracted by Queen Nova's screams. As a result, Nova was left bedridden for about a month, under the personal care of her father and watchful eye of her brother, who had been training as a squire under the Valerian Dame Celia McKnight. After she was nursed back to health and ready to begin reigning, Queen Nova was faced with a pandemonium to solve. Multiple reports of random murders, kidnappings, sacks, and violence on the streets of the kingdom kept arriving to the royal office, with most peasants living in constant fear and worry of being taken hostage next. The kingdom was wrapped in such wave of panic and chaos that there were various attempts to breach the castle walls and declare anarchy, finally prompting Nova to take matters into her own hands, against her father's advice, and figure out who was behind the seizures. "I am queen. These are my people," Nova replied when questioned by her father. Upon investigating the crime scenes herself, Nova concluded all kidnappings had left the same mark behind, which she immediately recognized as being her Aunt Celia's emblem. Worrying her aunt was somehow behind the kidnapping panic, Nova sent a letter to her cousin, the King of the Grim, notifying King of the Grim notifying him of the situation. The answer arrived just a short week later, but it wasn't what Nova expected. Her cousin revealed Solia had been reported missing for 3 months and was now feared dead at the hands of her abductors. Not long after, King Father Richmond was kidnapped by the same group that had abducted Solia's symbol, this time leaving a ransom letter behind that demanded Nova gave up the crown in exchange for her father's life within 1 week. Finding the terms ridiculous and implausible, Nova called the letter a bluff and took a stand against her enemies by climbing the castle rooftop the very same night, and performing her daily meditation for the public eye to see. While she managed to attain respect for her people for showing, in their words, such an immense amount of power, and consequently earning her the title the Cosmic, she got her results the following week as she received her father's head wrapped in a box with a note that read, "Perhaps the next hostage will teach you better." Effectively, Nova had been taken into a panic crisis after Cassie Firefly was reported missing immediately after the mourning for her father came to an end. That is, until she was surprised by the arrival of Hercules, who had been informed of his sister's disappearance through a letter from Prince Polo. Hercules managed to calm down the queen by reminding her of all the times she didn't give up when competing against him, declaring, "Don't tell me I've been mistaken about your strength this whole time. You know very well how much I hate being proven wrong, especially by you." The following months saw an intense collaboration between Nova and Hercules, piecing together every clue they could find about the kidnapping from witness reports to marks left behind by the perpetrators at the scene. There are those who believe Nova and Hercules shared more than just clues. During this period, though such rumors are unfounded and remains ambiguous to this day. Anyway, such search efforts would only be intensified by the news of the kidnapping of Lady Andromeda and Lord Breton Firefly. Hercules' parents, feeling sympathetic towards him, it was Nova who this time comforted Hercules, serving as each other's major support during those darkest hours. In any case, Nova and Hercules eventually uncovered the existence of a cult that was behind all the occurrences. In a letter to her council, Nova records, "The group responsible for all the unfortunate seizures is a cult apparently made up of rogue Solian supporters that defy my aunt and her ideals, which we assume to be the reason she was taken in the first place. This sun cult had as a major objective restoring Solia to the throne by murdering my mother, but their plans seem to have been frustrated when I returned. It led them to resort to sowing chaos and panic throughout the kingdom through all the random hostages, until I gave up the crown to their leader of unknown name. Rest assured, I guarantee you I won't back down and give in to their demands. The queen of the kingdom always." Nevertheless, when it came to the actual whereabouts of the cult's location, it remained an unsolved mystery, with any clues uncovered by Nova and Hercules, leading to a dead end or a location far too encrypted for them to pinpoint and the all-seeing eye spell proving ineffective. That is, until Lady Celia Midnight stepped forward and volunteered to serve as bait and reveal the location of their base. Despite initially being reluctant in allowing the plan to take place, Nova, influenced by Hercules and Polo, eventually gave in and authorized the play to fool the cult. So at dusk of the spring equinox of 919, Lady Celia McKnight was taken by the Soliant cult, just as Nova had planned. Before leaving and putting Polo in charge, however, Nova reportedly had one last vision, which confided only in Hercules, avoiding to reveal the details of what she had been shown to anyone else. The fear of compromising the timeline and their fate. Nova, Hercules, and a small garrison of about 20 knights kept close track of the kidnapper's carriage throughout the whole voyage, eventually reaching a stop near a small cave near the forest of improbable itchiness. A stark second was all it took for Nova to encourage to lose track of the captors, who had apparently disappeared inside the wall without leaving a trace behind. Despite her soldiers' lack of hope and willingness to go on, Nova was determined to not let the tracks go cold, and approached the wall alongside Hercules, knocking on the wall and whispering something to the granite stones. It was then that the barrier responded by rumbling and making way to a hidden pathway, with the Queen and Lord Firefly disappearing on the inside. There are no records of what actually happened on the other side of the wall, which would be the case had the only writing this passage not have access to the Queen's secret personal accounts of the night of the sundown catch. After Hercules and I passed the barrier, we lay low through the corridors while keeping the hoods on our heads. We eventually reached a grand open room full of corpses and a statue of Celia, between which we recognized Cassie, Hercules' parents, Lady Celia, and most surprisingly, even my Aunt Celia. It wasn't long before we found the leader of the whole group, and after Hercules took them down with a blow on the head, I cast a protective time loop on the whole grid of the case to ensure no one escaped this time. We apprehended more than 250 supporters of Celia's old cause that day, each of them still foolishly swearing by their values and refusing to admit their crimes. They remained imprisoned in the castle dungeons, and they shall stay there to their last breath. Regardless of the successful demonstration of the cult, successful dismantlement of the cult and finally having made justice for all the deaths of her loved ones, Nova still felt hollowed out inside, numb, and as if she had in fact lost. She later confessed to Hercules. Unsurprisingly, the young lord related to her pain and shared her grief, and the pair developed a stronger bond and understanding of each other over the course of the remainder of the year. Reports from servants at the time shed some light on the frequent private dinners between the Queen and her companion. At times they visited the cemetery or the crypts together to mourn the ones they lost, or even the whole night spent stargazing alone together, in complete silence, in tune with one another. In any case, by 9:20, Nova made her first public appearance after the night sundown catch, in which she announced her courtship to Hercules Firefly. Not long after, the pair returned to Elfindor to finally complete their course, reportedly even sharing a room, making Nova the first queen butterfly to officially attend the university dimension. Nova and Hercules graduated on St. Helia's Day of the same year, joining Elfindor's most honorary student gallery. Curiously, at the graduation party, the couple proposed to each other at the same time, with the royal wedding taking place in 921. It was an event widely celebrated throughout the capital and the continent, being worth mentioning the obvious affinity between young Prince Polo and Princess Cecilia Florence, which wouldn't go unnoticed by Queen Nova. Later that year, Nova announced she had arranged her brother to marry a foreign princess. A statement from King Hercules claims that, while initially reluctant and refusing, once Nova revealed the chosen bride had been none other than Celia Florence, Prince Polo calmed down and became smitten at the idea. The day before he departed, Nova herself finally consecrated Polo as a knight. From 922 to 926, Nova returned to an intense observation of the night sky in the castle rooftop through the use of the telescope spell, combined with several more trips to other dimensions and planets in the company of Hercules. She wrote down all the information she had found and was still finding or being shown in visions in a journal, which she kept with her at all times. That journal even turned into a book and published all over the continent, the iconic Novian Compendium on the cosmos and physics, co-revised by King Hercules and yours truly, which, as you know, gathers and compiles all the new information on Mewni's solar system and its origin at the time. The book was revolutionary, as it included unrevealed details on every celestial body that was part of the Helionic system, such as the types of star that Helia was, obscure discoveries about the planets that made up the system, a closer study on Venus, a magical morning star that accompanies Mewni's orbit, other laws of physics applicable in other dimensions, and the boldly naming of the super conglomerate of galaxies where Supina was inserted in as Skyween, after her ancestor Skyween, the Queen of Hours. The Novian Compendium is still considered as Nova's magnum opus, apart from being one of the proudest achievements. Hoping to share all her amazing experiences, she had ventured into astronomy and cosmos. In 927, Nova opened the very first planetary in the Butterfly Kingdom, with the cost of the admission tickets reverting to paying the debt of the War of Worlds. The original building was located where today is the end of the Crescent Avenue. The sky is not the limit this time. It's very much only the beginning, Nova famously said at the opening ceremony. Then came the stressful times entering 928. After 7 years of failed attempts, Nova began losing hope in conceiving an heiress, as most of her tries ended with the queen experiencing extreme pain, bleeding from her navel, or even passing out. Hercules convinced her to be examined by Lady Ceres Cross, with the results revealing that her attempt on her life at the very beginning of her reign had caused severe lacerations to her uterus, although it shouldn't be impossible for her to conceive in the future. The underlying injury would certainly make it more difficult and less likely. Such news affected Nova more than she wanted to admit, leading to the Queen try to keep her mind off the subject by occupying herself with a new project. The project in question would be using her knowledge on the cosmos and the universe to her advantage. and commencing to sell stars and comets to foreign monarchs, mostly from the Western Kingdom, less informed on the cosmos. Once again, all the money from the agreements went into the debt, giving Nova a considerable input at diminishing it. In 929, after attaining a vision of a comet crashing nearby and finding an infant nearby, Nova announced with a great bliss that she was expecting her first child. The girl was born at the end of the year and was named Celia. Celia had Hercules' amber eyes and brown hair inherited from her parental grandfather, wearing white wings on her cheeks. As a mother, Nova proved to be a demanding parental figure, with the members of her council often commenting that she was the bad knight while Hercules was the good knight. One of Nova's greatest headaches would be teaching Celia to be more wary of her surroundings, as the princess displayed an overly soft and easygoing personality that made the queen fear for the kingdom's own integrity in the future. However, an event in 940 made Nova change her mind and give up on trying to change her daughter to be like her, which will be addressed in Celia's chapter. My daughter taught me that there are more ways to be intelligent beyond numbers and books, Nova commented on the subject. Queen Nova passed the wand to Celia in 943 after her daughter reached 14 years of age, as tradition dictates. While she no longer had the relic, Nova was still able to attain visions when meditating, although not as intense or knitted as they once had been. After receiving news of her daughter's courtship with Sparrow Redbird in 946 AM, Nova began leaving the kingdom with Hercules and traveling to other dimensions more often. Historians speculate this is to test the princess's leadership qualities on her own. Whatever the case, when Celia came back and announced her engagement in 949, Nova felt at ease in handing the crown to her daughter, smiling with pride and joy at Celia's coronation and wedding. The following years, Nova and Hercules spent their time between many realms and travels, no longer to study them but simply sit back, relax, and enjoy retirement. Nova witnessed the birth of her first granddaughter, Dementia, in 953, followed by Harmony in 954, Faith in 959, Love in 961, Charity also in 961, and finally Peace in 967. Nova would also witness Dementia inherit the wand in 967, as well as standing by her granddaughter's side and supporting her along with Celia after Dementia announced her relationship at the ball. Many speculate Nova already knew of the courtship after she noted down a vision of a sword and a shield laying together on a bed a month prior to Dementia's birthday. One night in 969, Hercules reported Nova hadn't returned from her routine stargazing session at the castle rooftop. A search party was immediately launched, with Nova being found lifeless at her usual lookout spot, having passed away of natural causes. Witnesses claimed she had died facing the sky, with a serene expression and smile on her lips. She was buried in the castle crypts. 2 weeks of mourning were declared for Nova the Cosmic, the queen who had changed the world's perspective on the cosmos and what was thought to be known until then. Nova, during one of her meditations. That was the biography of Nova the Cosmic by Shyhobbyistdrawer31 on DeviantArt. So yeah, that was a fun biography, and next will be Celia Butterfly. Hope you guys enjoyed the biography, and I hope you have a lovely day and a lovely night. Bye!